Childhood trauma wired your brain wrong. Let's talk about it. But first, before we start talking about it, I really want to let start by saying this video could cause some triggers. So, this is a trigger warning because we will be discussing some trauma and some self critical thought patterns. So, please engage mindfully and turn it off, pause it, or come back to it later if you're experiencing any kind of overwhelm at any time. We're going to start with some common triggers. They're worth looking at because a lot of people have them. Many times we can be triggered by criticism, even constructive feedback, because of our prior events in our lives. Another really common trigger is perceived failure or mistakes. And believe it or not, stressful decisions. We all have stressful decisions in our lives, but some can really trigger us. Vulnerability in relationships. This is usually because of a relationship we were vulnerable in and it didn't go the way we thought it should, or something was used against us in a prior relationship. Moments of success can trigger us as well. It's called imposter syndrome. How can we spot these triggers? One good way to spot triggers is body cues. You might notice physical reactions in certain situations, such as tightness of chest, racing heart rate, sweaty palms, those type of things. The body can tell you a lot if you take the time to listen to it. Emotional patterns can be a clue. You might feel sudden shame when a particular subject's brought up. You might feel anger swelling up inside when you're put in certain situations. You might feel numbness when faced with something that might be an emotional pattern that happens. Sometimes writing can help. You figure out your triggers and what to do. Some questions that others have asked themselves is, when did I last feel worthless? What happened right before I started feeling that? Who was around when I felt that way? Let's talk about analyzing negative self talk patterns because we have a few common ones. And so here are a few common patterns that we can take a look at. Catastrophizing. We call it the faulty weather app. It covers thoughts like, I messed up this presentation, my career is over. Overgeneralizing. We call it the faulty pattern printer. It is just like it sounds. It's a generalization such as, I always fail at relationships. And then personalizing. We call it the faulty magnet. Things like, it's my fault the team lost the client. Of course, this thinking would be when they didn't say it was your fault and there was no evidence to substantiate your thoughts. And then there's the good old black and white thinking, aka all or nothing loop. We call it the binary code virus. You're probably familiar with this one. If I'm not perfect, I'm a failure. You can visit our resources and look at an extended list if you so desire. It is our general cognitive loops sheet, and I'll leave the link in the description for you, of course. Here is what you can do to break the cycles. First, you want to name the pattern. This is where our generalized cognitive loop outline sheet can come in handy. So it goes something like this. Fred, that's my critic, is catastrophizing again. Pro tip, name your critic. We talked about this in the last video, but it is really helpful and we'll talk about it in further future videos. Just trust the process for now. Name your critic. Next, you want to fact check Fred. What evidence contradicts this thought? From the example we talked about earlier on catastrophizing, Maybe you know a coworker that messed up a presentation but still works for the company. Maybe others didn't think you messed up and said good things, that you did a good job after the presentation. Look at the facts surrounding that particular situation. Lastly, you want to reframe it. This feels huge, but it's one moment in a long journey. Now that you know how this works, I'll give you an example of a lady I had spoken with for years. This is the triggering portion, so fair warning, it's about healing childhood trauma. This lady, I'm withholding her name, of course, because of the severity of her situation as a child. She grew up with an abusive father who would take her and her siblings away from their mother. He would threaten them with their lives. To survive, she internalized beliefs like, I can't trust anyone. People are dangerous. My needs don't matter. Yelling and screaming is the only way I can get people to listen. Here's how trauma shapes the inner critic. Our inner critic shapes as a survival mechanism, so our self talk often develops and becomes harsh in an attempt to protect us from perceived threats. Once the threats have passed, we tend to develop distorted beliefs from childhood trauma that can wire the brain to equate vulnerability with danger, or kindness with when might they turn on me. Of course, whenever you stack that childhood trauma with societal influence like perfectionism, those messages get even more distorted. The cultural message like hustle harder or never show weakness influence how we mold ourselves. Your race, sex, or even classism can have an even larger effect, along with those we surround ourselves with, of course. Healing work can come once we acknowledge the origin. Why is it important to try to acknowledge the origin? Well, if you have a very different life than the one you came from, that bad life is literally the past. It's already happened. And yes, it was horrible, but it is not the reality of your current life. You can then say, Fred formed to keep me safe, but he's outdated and things are different now, and I am safe. It's important to separate the past from the present. Then, in the past, when I was a child, I had no power. Now I have choices. Let's face it, some of us had some pretty crazy past experiences, but we want to take ourselves out of that self judgment and into self compassion. Here's a path forward and some action steps you can take. Action step number one: create a trigger log. Track when your critic flares up and what preceded it. Externalize the voice. Name your critic, the drill sergeant, Fred, to detach from it. Rewire the script, replace I'm unlovable with I'm learning to trust safe people. Like the woman who transformed her trauma into resilience, your inner critic doesn't have to define you. Healing isn't linear. Every small step weakens its grip. Your inner critic is a misguided guardian. Thank it for trying to protect you, then gently show it to the door. We've talked about how trauma can rewire our brains. Now, let's transform that wiring, starting with your inner dialogue. Mindfulness isn't just a trendy jargon, it's your neurological toolkit for turning critics into coaches. Here's how. When self criticism strikes, pause and label it calmly. Ah, there's the critic. We're going to call mine Fred. Naming it disarms power, so you name it what you will. Next, take a quick body scan. Notice any physical cues like clenched jaw, slumped shoulders, maybe even butterflies. These are your body's signals that the critic is active. Mindfulness weakens the amygdala's fear response while strengthening the prefrontal cortex's rational oversight. Let's break this down. Suppose your critic says, "I'm so stupid for forgetting that deadline." A mindful response might be, "I'm noticing Fred is launching a self attack. Let's investigate." You've just paused, you've labeled, and shifted into scientist mode. Now, challenge those thoughts. Ask, would I say this to my best friend? If the answer is no, reframe it. Replace it. Replace "I'm such a failure" with "I'm learning." And growth takes time. Science shows damaging self talk activates the brain's pain centers. Compassionate reframes trigger the caregiving system. Here's how to practice. I call this the best friend method. Place your hand over your heart. This simple touch releases oxytocin, calming your nervous system. Speak aloud. Say, "I'm sorry you're hurting. Your feelings matter. I believe in your strength to grow." Hearing compassion aloud rewires your brain differently than silent thought. Samples of reframes are "I'm so stupid" to "I'm gaining clarity through practice." "No one will ever love me." "I'm worthy of connection, just as I am." "I'll never get this right" to "mistakes are data, not my destiny." Try this daily compassion booster. Set a phone reminder to pause 3 times a day and ask, what does my inner ally want me to hear right now? Maybe you're allowed to take up space, or your progress is valid even when it's messy. Self-compassion isn't self-indulgence. It's emotional first aid. Studies show that it actually reduces anxiety by 43% and boosts resilience by strengthening neural pathways. Your inner critic is a rusty old algorithm. With mindfulness and deliberate kindness, you can reprogram it into a wise, compassionate coach. Try it. Try one reframe today. Your brain will thank you. Oh, yeah. P.S. Need a cheat sheet? Comment for our free Critic to Compassion translator. It has 50 phrases backed by neuroscience.